Hello, my name is Joe LaCour, and this is my son Spencer, who's going to be helping to narrate, and then my other son Will is going to be assisting in the slide presentation. We would like to read a story about an eagle and how it was part of our family history. It's a Civil War story that my great-grandmother had told my father, and it dates back to 1861. For a while, my dad had lived with his grandparents in a log cabin his grandfather built in the woods near Eagle Point. That's up north near Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. The cabin had 2 rooms, the kitchen where they did almost everything, and the bedroom where they slept. During cold, stormy days after supper, my great-grandmother told many family stories. She told stories of her parents, and she also talked about her grandparents. And they are my great-great-great-grandparents, Daniel and Margaret McCann. They had 16 children, and were lucky their son Henry wrote a Civil War story for the Herald-Telegram, a Chippewa Falls newspaper. From what my great-grandmother told my dad and what Henry wrote, this is how the special story goes.
A band of Chippewa Native Americans led by Chief Sky came down the Chippewa River from Lac du Flambeau. Their canoes were loaded with maple sugar they made to trade for supplies, and they did this every spring. And this was the spring of 1861. They came to Dan McCann's cabin near Jim Falls. Chief Sky told Dan's wife, Margaret, that they were hungry. And the family knew my grandfather's great-great-great-grandmother was part Native American, and that's why the Native Americans always stopped by their cabin. While they ate, Chief Sky told Dan and Margaret when they camped one night at the mouth of the Jump River that they saw an adult eagle hovering near a tall pine tree. Chief Sky, a young man back then, shot the adult eagle and chopped down the tree with the nest and captured a pair of young eaglets, and one of them died during the fall. When they came down the river with their maple sugar, they tried to sell the eaglet, but nobody wanted to buy it. Chief Sky wanted to trade the maple sugar for corn, but the McGanns already had their own maple sugar, so they already had enough. Seeing that they had half a sack of corn left from their spring planting, Chief Sky offered to trade the young eaglet for the corn.
Henry wrote when Henry's mother looked at the young eaglet in the canoe on the river, she thought it was a crow. The McCann family did not want crows on their farm because crows eat corn. She thought she was looking at crows until the Native Americans brought the other dead eagle for her to see. This convinced her that the birds were not crows, so they traded their half sack of corn for the young eaglet. The young eaglet became a pet for the summer, and one summer was enough. That eagle had a lot of work. An eagle gains about a pound every 4 to 5 days, so that's about 1 pound of food per day. It was almost always hungry. Henry wrote they clipped the eagle's wings to keep it close to their cabin, but because the eagle grew big and strong really fast, they stopped clipping its wings and put a blue ribbon around its neck. One day the eagle broke the line and flew to the river, and Henry said they all watched as the eagle soared, dove, and snapped up fish. When the eagle caught a fish bigger than him, Henry thought the bird's time has come. Somehow he managed to escape death. He was still a young bird, and Henry wrote that his eagle instincts saved him. Another day, the eagle flew north toward Burnett Falls and was gone for 4 days before it came back. And people knew it was the McCann eagle because of the blue neck ribbon. And after this escapade, his family tied the eagle more securely.
The McCann brothers and sisters had to go out hunting every day to bring home food for the eagle. They caught mice, squirrels, rabbits, and partridge, which the eagle finished off in a day. Sometimes even an unlucky chicken would be a meal. Like a pill, a mouse disappeared in a gulp. Eagles have very sharp talons. My great-great-great-grandmother said she saw scars on her grandmother's arm, and her grandmother was Dan McCann's daughter. She got the scars on her arms because the eagle that lived with the family perched on her arm. She also told my great-great-great-grandmother her brother Daniel had a bite mark on his wrist because he teased the eagle with the squirrel while giving it lunch. One late summer day, as the brothers and sisters struggled to keep their eagle fed, neighbors Sam and Porter Popple came to the McCann cabin to talk. They said the 8th Wisconsin Infantry Regiment would soon be sailing to Camp Randall for training, and then going off to the Civil War. They knew it was hard for Dan McCann to feed his whole family and also an eagle. They suggested he should take their eagle to Eau Claire and donate it to the regiment, and that's what Dan did. When the man in charge of the regiment, Captain Perkins, turned down his offer, Dan went to go talk to the soldiers. He told them the eagle could do tricks, and he asked them for a fiddle. Henry said because his father was crippled in an accident when he was a child, he learned to play the fiddle, and could he ever fiddle. Everyone had fun when Dan played Bonaparte's Retreat from Moscow at night for their family. The eagle walked around their cabin during slow parts, but fluttered its wings and hopped and danced during the fast parts. Henry said it almost looked like the eagle knew that the music was about Napoleon going to Moscow to take over Russia and getting beat. After Dan played Bonaparte's Retreat to show how the eagle danced, the volunteers decided that this eagle had to be their mascot. They pooled their dimes and bought the eagle for $2.50. That was a lot of money back in 1861. They knew Captain Perkins could not tell his volunteers they couldn't bring along the eagle mascot.
Before they got to Camp Randall in Madison to be sworn in and trained, they made a perch decorated with flags. The soldiers thought of everything. The perch was slanted so that when he pooped, it would not fall to the eagle guard. They tethered him to the perch with a long leather leash. They were proud of their big young eagle. The eagle reportedly had a wingspan of 7 to 8 feet. When they got to Camp Randall, the eagle and all of his soldiers were sworn in. He was officially a soldier. To honor their president, the Eau Claire volunteers named their mascot Old Abe. Because they had an eagle mascot, the soldiers of Company C changed the name from the Badger Company to the Eagle Company. It was an honor for soldiers to carry their mascot. He had 6 eagle guards. Company C soldiers were proud of their eagle, so were the soldiers of the Union Company. Henry wrote his father was also pleased because, being crippled, he could never really qualify to go to the Civil War. The McCann eagle served in Dan's place.
During the war, the McCann family did not keep track of Old Abe, as they were more concerned about the volunteers from their family or from the area who went to the war. They knew soldiers and their families, so they still heard stories about Old Abe. She's part of 39 different battles and skirmishes. Newspapers carried war stories from Missouri, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, Vicksburg, and Corinth. They heard about the war when families shared about the soldiers' letters. People collected those stories and gave them to the McCann family. Some described how Old Abe faced gunfire next to the Stars and Stripes, flew above battle screaming, and flattened on command like his soldiers when they faced cannon fire. When his soldiers were worn, tired, and feeling hopeless, he gave them fun and hope. Because he would not eat spoiled meat, even when they had little food for themselves, soldiers always got minnows out of streams and lakes, captured chickens, and found rabbits. In lulls between battles, he wandered through the camp, danced to their harmonica music, stealing food from their plates and drinking from their canteens.
On October 12, 1861, the regiment left for St. Louis, Missouri, where the eagle got loose and flew out of sight. Luckily, a policeman soon returned him. On the following day, the regiment left to Frederickstown, Missouri, and October 20th, the 8th Wisconsin took part in the Battle of Frederickstown. During the battle, the eagle bearer, James McGinnis, was ordered to carry Old Abe to the rear of the company for safety. When the brigade took cover and laid down, McGinnis kept Old Abe on his perch. The eagle, however, imitated the men and jumped off his perch to be close to the ground. McGinnis hoisted the bird back onto his perch, but again, Old Abe took cover. After several more attempts, McGinnis gave up and let Old Abe lay down. When the brigade rose, the bird leapt back onto his perch and flapped his wings. Here is where he earned the reputation on the battlefield. On May 9th, 1862, the Eagle Company experienced its first serious battle, which was the Battle of Farmington, Mississippi, during which Old Abe spread his wings and screamed. And on May 29th, the Confederates withdrew during the night. Here's a newspaper account of the battle claiming Old Abe soared over the front lines. A bullet cut the cord and held Old Abe on his perch. About the same time the cord was cut, Old Abe was shot through one wing, cutting through 3 quill feathers, but not drawing blood. And the bearer, David McLean, was shot through his left shoulder and right leg. One of Old Abe's most famous battles was the Battle of Vicksburg, Mississippi in 1863. The reason it was so important is because the Confederates controlled the lower Mississippi with this river town. On May 22nd, General Grant started the invasion of Vicksburg. During that time, his forces suffered heavy losses, so he changed his tactic to cutting off the Confederate supply. Day and night, Union forces shelled Vicksburg. During this putsch, the 8th Wisconsin Infantry with Old Abe was in the thick of the fighting. And during the march, a girl yelled out, "Look at that old Yankee buzzard," which enraged the men. And then finally on July 4th, the Confederates surrendered.
Even though Confederate officers offered rewards to rebel soldiers for that Yankee buzzard, dead or alive, all 6 soldiers who carried him home came home. He lost a few feathers, but when the 8th Wisconsin marched in review, he spread his wings wide. Union generals saluted him, and Confederate generals offered big rewards for his capture rather than for a whole regiment of Union soldiers. In September 1864, Old Abe was mustered out with his soldiers and came back to Wisconsin, where he lived in the Eagles Department, a room in the state capitol in Madison. It was a privilege and honor for Civil War vets to volunteer to guard and care for him every day. People came from all over the world to visit the War Eagle. When he was on tour, veterans were his escorts. He was even at the World's Fair in Philadelphia.
One of the soldiers in the Battle of Vicksburg was H. Bennett. He became a photographer, and besides taking pictures of the Dells and loggers rafting on the Wisconsin River, he took many photos of Old Abe. His picture of Old Abe on a cannon is the most popular. One artist made a bronze statue of Old Abe for the Camp Randall Arch. He was invited to join P.T. Barnum's circus for $20,000, but the state of Wisconsin kept Old Abe comfortable at the state capitol. In the winter of 1881, on a cold night, some paint and oil stored in the basement caught fire and created a dense smoke. Old Abe's screams brought help, and the bird was released from his cage. His lungs were damaged by the smoke and gas flames. Old Abe never really fully recovered and grew weaker and weaker until he died on March 21st in 1881 in the arms of his keeper, George Gillis. And he was 20 years old, which is a really long life for an eagle.
Old Abe was surrounded by old friends and wounded veterans. The soldiers wanted Old Abe buried in the soldiers' plot in Forest Hill Cemetery in Madison, where hundreds of Union and Confederate dead are buried. But the eagle's display value was considered too important by state authorities, and he was stuffed and mounted and displayed in the Capitol building. A few years later, in 1904, his body was destroyed in a second fire in the Capitol building. A brave soldier gone, but not forgotten. In August 1942, the 101st Airborne Division adopted Old Abe as its mascot, and since World War II, the soldiers were nicknamed the Screaming Eagles and are recognized for their dedication, courage, and valor.
Today you can go to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum on the square in Madison and see a replica of Old Abe. So there's lots of books in the Civil War, and some of them include Old Abe, but my great-great-grandma's stories will always be my favorite. So after 150 years, a controversial topic of Old Abe, the War Eagle, was whether it was actually a male or a female. And recently that was laid to rest by UW-Madison's molecular archaeology group. So due to his large size, Old Abe's taxidermist said he was probably a female. So back then, this set off many angry feelings, especially by the Civil War veterans. So you can imagine the arguments that ensued whether he was a male or a female. But according to a July 2016 article in the Wisconsin State Journal, it reported on the successful DNA test results. Samples from 4 of Old Abe's feathers were used to conduct the genetic testing, and the feathers had been stored at the Wisconsin Veteran Museum in Madison. So after 3 months of testing, results from all 4 feathers concluded that the bird was in fact a male. So the age-old question was answered. Old Abe was definitely a male. So we hope you enjoyed our family story, and it's a pretty neat piece of history of Wisconsin, and we appreciate you listening.